Okay, so in some of the previous videos, we've seen that we can do console output to some output to the console window. So you might be thinking, well, how can we do input if we want to type something in, maybe in the console from the keyboard, type some values in, maybe do some calculations on those values, stuff like that. Well, we can do that using cin or console input. This uses the stream extraction operator to extract data from the input stream. Okay, that is two greater than symbols basically. That forms one operator even though it's two characters, and that extracts data from the input stream, which is the keyboard by default. We'll talk about streams in more detail in module 2. You can actually have different streams, so from files and stuff like that. So here's an example, int age, we input. So instead of initializing that to some value, we can initialize it using some input from the keyboard. So you can do cin, which is console input. From the keyboard, type in some value, press enter, and then that value will be stored in that variable. So these arrows, you'll get used to these arrows, kind of where they point, these operators, but you can think of it as the movement of data. So from the console input, we take data from that and we store that into the variable on the right. Whereas if we do cout, previously we would move data out to the left, to the console. So we'll get used to this with practice. I would like to mention that cin is also in the file iostream and is also defined in the standard namespace. All right. So you have to include iostream to use it, similar to cout. And then of course you also have to use the standard namespace. So if we want to enter these values from the keyboard, what I'll do is I'll have them be declared but not defined, like this. What we can do now is I'll keep it short, I'll simply write so with colon and then space. Now in this case I won't do an end line because I want the value to appear right next to with. Then I'll do cin for console input, the stream extraction operator, and that variable, so with. Then I'll do cout again. What we can see here is, firstly, we ask the user to enter a value, so width in this case. You can type in here, please enter the width, please enter the length, and so forth. I'm just keeping it short here. We have console input. Then we have the stream extraction operator. Okay, so from the console, right, it's going to take the input and store it in this variable. So you can think of it like the arrows are pointing towards where things are going to go or be stored or output. So here we are outputting to the console, so console output, and from the console again, from some console input. And in future lessons in module 2, we'll see that we can input from other streams as well, input from and output to other types of streams, such as files, for example. But we'll talk about that later. For right now, we are inputting from the console. We extract data from the console and we save that basically in the width variable. Same thing here with length. And then here we simply multiply those and then print them out. So of course, these are not defined up here. They're simply declared, and we'd actually define them via the input here. I'll enter 3 and then press enter, and then 4 for length, and press enter again, and then we'll get 12. So that works fine. I'm happy with that. You can of course do something like this. So I just want a space here. I would like to mention you can do end line in here as well, so something like that. Okay, so it's going to do a new line and then it's going to print the stuff, so it's not up against what we have output here. So let's try that. Control F5 to run. Enter 3, press enter or return. Or 5, you can actually press backspace to change that. So backspace, enter 4, press enter. Then have something like this, the area is 12. Okay. So of course I'm just demonstrating this quickly here. You can change the wording and so on. You can add another string here to output a dot after the area is printed out. But I think you get the point from this demonstration. I also talked about declaring variables right before you use them. So here what you can do is you can leave it like it is here. Then you can do this, paste that here, and the area you can do here. Then just clean this up a bit. Run this. You'll see this will work fine. 3, 4, or 5 or something else. You see this will work. Okay, so of course these are simple applications, so you can, if you want, you can keep these variables up here if you really want to. You can keep them up here, but in many cases it's better to have them like closer to where you'll actually be using them. So in this case it doesn't matter too much, but in some cases you have code blocks where this will matter, because things can go out of scope and stuff like that. But we'll talk about that as we go along. Where we initialized these previously, so when you had int width here, initialized to something like 5. So 5 here is also a literal, so we are assigning the literal 5 using the assignment operator. We are assigning that to width, or initializing that variable. And of course here width is set to 5 initially, but we are going to change it when we do the input. So I'll run this to width of, again, 3, length 4, and we'll get 12. So we initialize it, but we change it here. Similarly, we can change it again. So we can change it here to something like 10, and run this again. Now it won't matter what we input, it'll stay 10. So 3, 4, 10 times 4 is 40, okay? Even though we initialize it to some value, we change it here again, and then here we change it again, we set it to 10. This is kind of silly, so I can remove it.